Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Simply Monique radio show. I'm your host, Monique, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very unique guest on our show. He and his wife have done major things in our local community. And when I say major things, I mean they have actually adopted and fostered over 60 children. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, over 60 children have come through their home and been a part of their family. Our guest, ladies and gentlemen, is Dr. John DeGarmo. He is an international parenting and foster care expert, also a TEDx speaker. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, he is a TEDx speaker. That's pretty cool. Dr. John is also an international consultant to schools, legal firms, foster care agencies, as well as an empowerment and transformational speaker and trainer for the schools, child welfare, businesses, and nonprofit organizations. One of my favorite things he is also, you all, he's an author. That's right, an author. I love books. I love reading books. He's the author of Love and Mayhem, One Big Family's Uplifting Story of Fostering and Adoption. Guess what else he does, you all? He writes for several publications. Dr. John has appeared on CNN, HLN, Good Morning America, ABC, CBS. I mean, it's a plethora of different organizations that he has been graced to be on their stages. So we are so honored today to have Dr. John on our stage here at the Simply Monique radio show. Let's dive into Dr. John's journey as well as discussing his books and other avenues. Welcome to the show, Dr. John.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure to have you here with us today. So I know briefly I shared a little bit about you to our followers, but what's something unique outside of being such a huge component in our community that you would like to share with our audience and starters?
Well, I think you nailed a lot of it there. I've had as many as 11 kids in my house at the same time, including 7 in diapers, which I think is a little bit different.
Yes, that is definitely different. I cannot imagine 7 in diapers. Oh my gosh, what a kickoff. How did you and your wife do that? Like, oh my gosh, I have a lot of siblings, but I can't imagine. I don't know. I would probably be going crazy with that.
Well,
how did you guys do that?
It's 100%. You know, some couples say it's 50-50. For my wife and I, it's 100 and 100. We're both giving 100%. We both rely upon each other. And then our own children, we also get help from our own children. But we just make it happen. You know, people say, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. We say, watch us. We're going to do it.
Yes, definitely. You guys are doing that. And so November is actually Foster Care Awareness and Adoption Month, and you've been rather busy traveling and speaking. So some questions I would like to ask you, Dr. John, is, since you and your wife have been a part of this community, what changes have you all noticed, like in regards to the welfare system, from the first time you all had someone in your home to the most recent time you had someone, including, you know, with your children? What changes would you say you've noticed over time?
Well, process? There's good and bad in what we've seen. In the last 20 plus years, I've seen, in the good aspect, I've seen a lot more support services available for foster and adoptive parents, whether it's online with webinars, podcasts, or whether it's in person with foster and adoptive parent support groups springing up across the country. One of the drawbacks I'm finding, or more challenges, if you will, is, you know, there's the true pandemic is not a virus. The true pandemic is mental health issues. Our children are facing a pandemic of mental health issues, and it's a real mental health crisis in our society for our kids. There was a 70% increase in teenage suicide attempts since COVID. There are a variety of mental health challenges our kids are facing that are overwhelming them, and so many foster and adoptive parents really aren't equipped to handle all these challenges.
Wow. That last remark is very true. I just learned of a young man committing suicide at about 16 years old recently. And then another young man, he committed suicide. He was with the AI thing. He was chatting with the AI bot or whatnot. And he was about 14, and he committed suicide to go be with this figment, you know, not a human being, with this figment, right, this AI thing. He committed suicide. And apparently this young man had been dealing with depression. And so a lot of people blamed his mom, and I'm not going to blame his mom for his depression. You know, I cannot personally blame his mom for that, but she did say that he was dealing with depression, and apparently this conversation with the AI bot it encouraged him to do so. Instead of saying, not to do it, it encouraged him, which is the opposite. And so the fact that you said 70% of our teenagers are struggling with suicide, that's an alarming rate. It's very high. And so I know teens deal with domestic violence issues, was not really talked about, but highlighting mental health, those who deal with post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, some anxiety and depression, those are disorders as well. But bipolar disorders, I've seen in some who are autistic, they tend to lean more in our young people, if you will. And since some people have learning disorders as well, we all familiar with ADHD. But in your line of work, what methods or tools would you recommend for those who want to adopt children and foster children? What method or tools would you recommend them taking, or courses them taking, to be able to help their children not commit suicide, and get the help they need for their mental illnesses?
Well, first of all, they got to have awareness. You got to have awareness of what the symptoms look like, what the signs look like, and how to help. Take trauma-informed classes, take suicide prevention classes, read books, etc. Listen to podcast webinars. And also to surround yourself with some type of support group where you can meet with others who have the same type of struggles and challenges with the children they're facing in their home. Something I want to note is something we've also seen is I want you to go back to 2020 when we as a society decided to close the schools down and thought that was in the best interest of the children. Well, here I was in April of 2020 saying you've got 5 million children in the United States who experience domestic violence in their house every single day. And
right.
They go to school for 3 reasons. They go to school for 2 meals a day because they're not getting them at home. They're going to school for a mandated reporter, and finally they're going to school for 8 hours a day, not being abused, not being raped, not being abused in some fashion. And what we did as a society was we locked them at home with their abuser 24 hours a day with no mandated reporter whatsoever. Again, thinking that was the best interest of children. Well, as a result, we have had that huge, tremendous rise in mental health issues. And it's no wonder children are turning to suicide because, again, we told them, hey, school's a bad place, go home to your abuser.
We gave them the wrong idea, and that is definitely true. Now the kids are so glued to their laptops, to their iPads and their phones and whatnot, and they don't understand how to interact with human beings. Growing up, we were outside all the time. There was no getting on the computer to do your schoolwork. We had those really old wonky computers when they were there and when they worked anyway. But it was the idea of interacting with human beings, going outside to play. But now they're so stuck to their phones, if they have them. And when you mentioned about being in an abusive environment, I definitely understand growing up and being in an environment where school is your safe haven. It was a place where you can go and be protected from your abuser, be it sexual abuse, mental, emotional, financial, some form of neglect or abandonment that a child is experiencing at home. That school was a safe haven. And yes, I do see the point when as far as them being at home and at home now constantly around this person, they're afraid to talk about and share things, especially in the African American community. We were taught growing up, what goes on in this house stays in this house, that you don't go out and you don't share that information, right? And even some kids outside that community are told the same thing in a different way. And also, I will say this: when the kids when the kids are just stuck on their computers doing schooling at home, they don't really learn the same. They aren't grasping the concept. Honestly, I feel like they have so many different pressures that's influencing them. Not only the environment they're in is toxic. Now they have to look at this computer screen and they're not really understanding the information being taught to them because the teachers, they're not really motivated or inspired to actually convey the message anymore because of whatever issues they may have on wanting to go on strike and so forth and so on. So how do you think our education system, if you will, has played into the mental health issues and the children still facing their abuser, if you will?
Well, teachers today are much like social workers. They're overworked, overwhelmed, under-resourced, under-supported, understaffed, and underpaid. And teachers are struggling because there seems to be more and more responsibilities and duties placed upon teachers in our society, in our nation today, than every single year. And that's giving them less time to actually devote to planning their lessons and to teaching in general. Teachers have there's pre-test and post-test, and they have responsibilities and duties outside of the classroom itself during school hours and after school hours. So teachers really are struggling to teach. And that's maybe one of the reasons why we have a shortage of teachers in our nation right now. So we need to take less emphasis on all of those extra responsibilities that teachers have and give them more time to do what they want to do, and that is to teach and help children. You mentioned the online aspect of it. When these kids were at home during 2020 and 2021, much of them were not doing their schoolwork. They were watching videos and playing games, etc. And for those most vulnerable children, that's where the sexual predators were online, roaming online, roaming social media, trying to find those most vulnerable children and lure them in with false hopes and false promises. And before we know it, they're victims to human trafficking as well.
Yes, I something, and I read something previously, and I actually watched, I don't know if it was Robert Walters or one of them, she actually was interviewing a guy, and he was a predator, and he was being interviewed and explaining how he got his victims, and literally he got his victims through, they said with the father figure, he said if the father figure is present there, someone's showing there, I won't bother that child. But if it was lack of a father figure, it was being ignored, or some sort of abuse that was actually occurring in the home, they scouted them out. That's who they would go after, because they figured nobody cares about this child. And so when you mentioned human trafficking, that's literally what's happened. And now it seems like more and more kids are missing. And it's almost every day I see something on the news where somebody's child is missing. I'm like, come on, But what are we doing as parents, as foster parents? What are we doing to protect our child?
Well, we have seen a tremendous increase in human trafficking in our nation and missing children, and that much of that is due to the issue at the border in our nation. In the last 4 years under this current administration, we've had an open border policy, and predators are just they have embraced that, if you will. They've embraced that, and we've seen so many children dragged across the border and then go missing. And we know where they're going. They're victims of human trafficking or worse. Right.
I just, human trafficking, the TIP statistic says that there's globally, we have 133,943 victims who have been identified for human trafficking. And we've had 7,115 convictions. That's a small number, considering how many people are missing right now due to human trafficking.
The number one global business, human trafficking, and it happens in every single community.
Yes, it does. Sadly, the U.S. Department says we estimated 27.6 million victims worldwide at any given time. And which is true. Personal experience I had previously, a few months ago, I was out of town, and I was at a hotel, staying in a hotel, and I just gotten there, but I saw this guy, not being funny, but he was Hispanic in nature. He kept watching me, and it made me very uncomfortable. And I was trying to tell the owner of the hotel, the people at the hotel at the front counter, listen, hey, because, they can hear what you're saying at the front counter. People can be eavesdropping. It doesn't matter where you're standing. You can be said at the Hyatt Regency or the Hilton, even the Omni Hotel or whatnot. You can be staying in one of those high-end hotels. So nevertheless, I was there, and the guy kept watching. And so the front desk clerk or whatnot, he said, hey, well, this is your room number, that's on the third. And I saw the guy, I kept paying attention because my military instinct started kicking in, And so I was like, hey, can you move me somewhere else? And then when I went to go to my room there, somehow I knew the guy heard me, but I saw him. He tried to hide. So what I did, I hid myself right on a little pillar. I literally hid myself and went back to the front counter. Bottom line, fast forward anyway, they ended up calling the police and having that guy arrested because I knew I didn't trust him. Something wasn't right for me, because he was watching. Next thing you know, somehow he was ending up on the same stairwell, everything where I was somehow. And I was like, I'm not staying here. I'm not doing this here. And so they did have him arrested. I don't even know if the hotel is still in business, but nevertheless, simple things like that. Just staying someplace, and people watching you. And it's as simple as they look innocent, right? Even if they look innocent, like they're not up to nothing. But for whatever reason, I knew Buddy wasn't up to any good, And yeah.
Absolutely. And so many people don't want to address this issue because it makes them feel uncomfortable. So they don't address it, they ignore it, they pretend it does not exist. They refuse to acknowledge it, they focus on other things. Always telling legislators that this is not an issue of goods and services, this is an issue of children, and there should be a sense of urgency as a result.
It should be. It's an urgency. We cannot avoid this conversation, Dr. John. Like, we cannot avoid this issue. It's every day. 12-year-old, 8-year-old, 4-year-old, someone getting snatched from school, on the way to school, a little girl in New Jersey, missing. And you're looking for your child, and you have little trackers and stuff like that. I'm not sure, have you seen this, where they're putting little hair trackers in their hair for the little girls? Yes. I saw something. I think that's a pretty neat idea.
Yes.
It's sad that we have to resort to that,
Right, it is sad, but that's the world. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in.
For sure. Now, this book, if we can kind of go into that, your book, I know it is you're internationally your bestseller, but this book that you all wrote, how did you come to the conclusion, like, hey, I'm going to write this book, I'm going to get this message out there for people? How did that come about?
Well, I wanted to write a book that didn't sugarcoat foster parenting, but really explain and adoption, but shed a light on it to bring awareness to it. The joys, the sorrows, the successes, the failures, the heartbreak, the rewards, and also to encourage people to consider it as well.
Okay.
And, it's a book full of a lot of humor, a lot of tears, a lot of emotion.
Yes. Question, Dr. John, how would you recommend families, proceed to get into the adoption process? What's some, do's and don'ts to people to be aware of when it comes to getting ready to foster a child or go through the adoption process?
Well, there's a couple of different ways, of course, to adopt. You can either adopt internationally, or you can adopt here in the country, and you can adopt through foster care, which is what my wife and I have done. And I always tell people, if you're considering adopting through foster care, you should not go into foster care with the intention specifically of adopting, because the end goal of foster care is reunification between the child and his biological parents or birth family members. And many times, kids in foster care, they do go back home. And my wife and I have adopted 3, but we've also experienced 4 failed adoptions, which means for whatever reason, the adoption process did not work out. And I detailed that in my book. So there is that aspect, the adoption through foster care, and it could be very, very rewarding. There's 120,000 kids in the foster care system who are looking for that forever home, that forever family. And I believe that every child does deserve a forever family. And some people might say, well, it's too expensive to adopt. Well, through foster care, there really is very little expense. Many times it's just the expense, if you will, of an attorney. And I know many attorneys will waive that fee because there's a child from foster care going to a forever family.
That I, for one, came through the foster care system. So I'm grateful for my family that decided, hey, we want to take you guys in. And so my experience it wasn't always peaches and cream, I will tell you that. So coming through that and being a product of that, a positive product, if you will, because sometimes some kids who come through the foster care system we don't always have the best stories, the happiest stories, right? Our outcomes may not always be the best. But having families and parents who love and care and respect you and who aren't in it for the money, quote unquote, they actually value you, then it becomes a great experience for the person. You can grow up and to have that success that you need and have that family and the love that you need. You may or may not get reunited with your family, but for us, some of my siblings and I, we were able to still be involved and connected to our family members. We were able to get be connected to our family, remain connected to our family. And I will say, being able to have that background, and even for myself, being able to volunteer and communicate, for those who aren't able to foster children or adopt children, would you say volunteering, being like I forgot the term they call for people to go to the courtroom, and they can listen and help the kids? Yes. For those who can't foster or adopt, would you say being a Costa, that's a great experience, right? For them to do
Oh,
so, or
there are so many ways. The CASAs, yes, CASAs are fantastic programs. There are so many ways people can help a child in crisis without being a foster parent. And not everybody should be a foster parent, and not everybody can be a foster parent. But everybody can help in some way. Everybody can help in some way, whether it is being a CASA, a court-appointed special advocate, or being a mentor for a child, or donating school supplies, or backpacks filled with hygiene items, or helping out with holidays and birthdays. Those are just a few of the many, many ways people can help a child in the foster system without having them in their home.
yes. Would you say would you say given the names of things that's occurring right now? You mentioned earlier about mental health conditions. Um, have you and your wife fostered faced any barriers during the process? What you all were doing as far as being able to foster or adopt? Were there any barriers that you all faced, or that you would care to share as far as anything that you faced or people can face when it comes
Oh,
to doing foster?
well, it's tough. It's a tough lifestyle. I call it a lifestyle because when you're bringing a child into your home who is in crisis, a child who has issues of trust, who has issues of attachment, as well as they should, because we're strangers to these children. So there's that barrier of trust and attachment that you've got to break through sometimes, and that can take quite a bit of time and patience and compassion. There can be the barrier of not enough support services for foster parents or for the child in general. Those children, they need professional therapy and counseling, and they may not be offered for them in the area they live in. There are lots of barriers to being a foster parent, and I'll tell you, it's been the hardest thing I've done, but it's also been the most rewarding thing I've done. And every child that's come through my home has made me a better person in some way, and they're all members of my family.
I love that. And I love that you see the good, the positive. Something you said earlier on, Dr. John, was about making it happen. And that was the key thing. A lot of times we are afraid to make things happen. So if anyone wants to write a book, if you want to foster children, you can make it happen and not allow barriers or fears or worries to stop you from being being a good steward, being a community advocate or an advocate for children who deal with mental health issues, who deal with loneliness or fear or trauma and trust issues. So a few of the questions I would ask you, Dr. John, as it pertains to this process here. Um, when it comes to being a foster parent of this fostering children, is there, would you say the agencies that you work with, is there a particular process they go through for matching children with the foster families?
Oh, yes, to be sure. First of all, as a foster parent, when I get that phone call for a
Mm-hmm.
place in home, I've got to ask myself pretty quickly, I try to find out as much information about the child and the child's condition, because I have to determine, is this a good fit for my family today? Is my family
Mm-hmm.
good fit for the child today? And can I provide the support services and the resources that child might need today? And sometimes that answer might be no. I might not be able to provide the specific help or resources that child might need at that very moment. Or my family might not be a good fit for that child, etc. So, yes, there are some things you need to consider when placing a child in your home.
That is important. I love the fact that you mentioned about on both sides, instead of just making it all about you, if the child can fit you, but also if the child be a good fit, in your home, looking at both sides. Because sometimes we can look at the lens one way, just from our perception and not the other person. So I love the fact that you highlight that and also make points to evaluate whether or not, if you have the resources, and the tools to be able to take another child or children in. I know, having worked with children and worked in a group home a while back, it was definitely an eye-opening experience because you see, I met children from all backgrounds, and some of them have anger issues, and they be ready to fight. It's
Right.
like, my God, yeah. So how would you, like, for those, even let's say when you're a parent outside of being a foster parent, what advice would you give someone as a parent, as parenting to someone who deals with anger issues, a young person who deals with anger or wanting to fight someone? What advice
Well,
do you give that mom or that dad?
not to take it personally to begin with. It has nothing to do with you as a person. It has everything to do with the child. The child's often overwhelmed with emotions or feelings he can't process or he doesn't understand. So he might do one of two things. He might withdraw, or he might lash out. And when he lashes out, he often lashes out to the person who is closest to them, at that moment. And so as someone who's caring for a child with anger management issues, again, it's often, you've got to remind yourself, this is not about me. This is about the child, and the child is suffering, what the child's going through. In addition, it's critical that you get the child professional therapy and professional counseling services. When my air conditioning unit broke over the summertime, I called an expert. When my car broke down, I called an expert. Are the expert in that field, and we should never feel ashamed when we take a child to a professional therapist. We shouldn't think we're a failure as a parent. No, it's just the opposite. We're being proactive. We're looking for the best possible help and support services for that child.
Exactly. You are spot on there. Are there any last questions, any last comments you'd like to leave our audience with, Dr. John?
Well, I just want to say what I said again. Not everybody can be a foster parent, but everybody can help in some way. And when we have 500,000 kids approximately in the foster care system, when we have 800,000 children missing, when we have 5 million children abused in their own home every day, that means it happens in every community, sometimes in every neighborhood, and we can all help child in crisis today. Because as we're having this conversation right now, this very moment, or someone is listening to this conversation right now, there is usually a child within a mile of where we live who's saying, somebody please help me.
Yes, I certainly agree. Well, I would like for you to let our audience know, Dr. John, how they can get in touch with you to have you come speak at their event. You are a TEDx speaker internationally known, so you are no chump change.
Thank you. It's pretty simple. Just look up Dr. John DeGarmo or the Foster Care Institute online. I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube at Dr. John DeGarmo. Very simple.
Indeed. That's a little branding tip. There. Everything is the same, ladies and gentlemen. Well, we'd like to thank you, Dr. John, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be a guest on the Simply Monique radio show. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, you all stay up, be blessed, and peace. And here's a note from our sponsor.
Hey y'all, it's Taisha and Bryant, the Parent Healer, and I support the Simply Monique Show, a show for real people about real conversation. Tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. I am the founder, CEO of We Have a Purpose Incorporated, a nonprofit organization that provides prevention and intervention services for at-risk youth and their families. I am also the owner of Resilient Family Wellness, where we specialize in parent and emotional distress coaching. We believe that our parents must heal so our kids can live and break from the cycle of pain. Speaking of pain, have you ever been involved in a car accident? If so, have your attorney contact us for your coaching after the crash, where we enhance your life and your settlement. Remember, your mental health is just as important as your physical health. While we're here, head on over to www.taishaandbrian.com and grab my books, Imperfectly Perfect, 3 Steps on the Parenthood Journey, and Resilience Over Regret, a journey of teen pregnancy, faith, love, and family. Yep, your girl's an author too. Again, this is Taisha and Bryant, the Parent Healer, and I support the Simply Monique Show. My husband and I are tuned in every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. I love y'all because I can, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Hey, this is your girl, Pastor Mo, the Confident Woman, and the founding pastor of New Life International Ministries. I want you to know that I am a supporter of the Simply Monique radio show, and I invite you to tune in every Thursday at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on all streaming platforms. This show is a platform for individuals to have authentic conversations about faith, business, and lifestyle. The Simply Monique radio show allows guests and her audience to be educated, empowered, and equipped to achieve personally and professionally. Sit back and listen on all streaming platforms. the Simply Monique Radio Show.
I am Jared Lasky of Fireborn Ministries, and I was graciously hosted by Monique on her radio show. And I had a great conversation with her on my podcast, Adventures in the Spirit with Jared Lasky. I fully support and endorse Monique's outreach that is reaching countless people around the world. My ministry, Fireborn Ministries, lives to see Jesus awaken this generation to the power of the Holy Spirit. Whether it's through podcasting, e-courses, webinars, seminars, conferences, coaching, books, or evangelistic crusades in places like Pakistan or India, we also liberate persecuted Christians from brick factory slavery and rehabilitate them with new jobs that help support a free educational school for poor kids in Pakistan. Our world needs the gospel, but also biblical, ethical, entrepreneurial kingdom businesses setting captives free. It's an honor to partner with Monique and see Jesus move in your life.